Was Lincoln gay? Are you even kidding me right now? You ever have those times in life where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to hold back. This might be one of those episodes. We will wait and see.
Great, I'll make popcorn.
But recently, my family and I took a spring break trip to Washington, D.C., which is home of the United States federal government, which almost everyone knows that living here in the United States, but there are some who watch this channel who are outside of the United States. We had a great time. We went to the top of the Washington Monument. We went inside both the Senate and the House chambers. That was really, really cool. We did not get a trip inside the White House, but of course we drove by and we stood outside the gates, and we did so much more. We had a great time as a family. It was fun, relaxing, exhausting too, as most family vacations are. And as we began to look at all the exhibits from the home of the great George Washington in Mount Vernon to the numerous Smithsonians, there emerged time and time again, either in narratives written or spoken, DEI, or just plain leftist talking points, however you want to say it. They're becoming one nowadays. But for those who are not familiar with DEI, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it has invaded our private sector businesses and the government at large. And the way DEI is achieved is through dictator-like force. It is the religion of nonsensical postmodern babbly-bunk adopted by the Democrat Party. Is babbly-bunk a word? Babbly-bunk. Babbly-bunk. I have no idea. But I like it, so we're going to keep it. It used to be said DEI was a position held by the radical left, but the Democrat Party has adopted it full stock, so radical it is no more. It's simply just a platform being pushed by the Democrats. And during our visit to different places, and specifically the National Archives, we were informed there was a brand new exhibit. Only open 30 days, and its focus was on the lives of coal miners. Now, I am the great-grandson of a coal miner. My great-grandfather was a coal miner in Hazard, Kentucky, so I wanted to visit this experience. In fact, I found a picture of one of my possible family members on display, which was very cool. But as I walked through the exhibit and viewed these stunning photos, two pictures caught my eye. And in the attempt to describe coal miners' spiritual life in the display, they had these two photos. And as you can see, it shows the radical, non-biblical, and crazy insane practice of snake handling. And this, of course, was the only church life pictures they had displayed. This is how they want to portray Christians and those who attend church, which is, of course, that they're crazy nuts. There were no pictures of baptisms or a pastor presiding over a funeral or a wedding because, of course, that wouldn't fit their aim. These ideologues want the crazy church people to be seen as just that, which is crazy. And this kind of framing and talk permeated so many of the exhibits ran by the federal government or funded by the federal government. But nothing did we find more egregious than what we found at Lincoln's cottage. Now, some of you may not know, but just outside of D.C., President Lincoln and his family spent several summers at what is now referred to as President Lincoln's cottage. For more than a quarter of his presidency, Abraham Lincoln lived at this cottage. Here he made some of his most critical decisions about freedom, the Union, and the presidency, and it was in this very room, sitting at that mocked desk, probably in that very spot, they suspect, where he penned the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, just an aside, that desk there is a recreation from the actual desk that he wrote on. The actual desk is now in the infamous, or probably more adequately termed, famous Lincoln bedroom in the White House. But that is an exact replica of it. It was surreal to stand in the same room where Lincoln slept and paste and wrote one of the most important documents in American history. And during the tour, it was asked, what happened to all the furniture? Now, our guide said that he didn't have time to get into it, but they have a podcast called Q and Abe. Yes, that's very, very punny. I have to hand it to him. That's a good one. And he said in that podcast, we could go there, and they addressed that very question. We decided to listen to the podcast on the drive home. But to my dismay, I found in the current episodes this topic. Was Lincoln gay? Was Lincoln gay? Are you even kidding me right now? And if that wasn't enough for these shills, they had another podcast called 19th Century Queer. In some ways, I don't even know where to start. The audacity to smear the integrity of a man who, by all accounts, had great trust in God, to smear him in this way was downright abhorrent. I was so irritated when I saw that they would even have this as a covered topic about the President Abraham Lincoln. It just goes to this indoctrination that's happening right now in America and in the world at large, perhaps. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure I'm tuned into that enough. But in America, this leftist idea that there are no objective truths. We are in post-Christian, postmodern worlds, and we have to just include everyone, and everyone's got to be nice, and oh yes, and we need to reinterpret the past. That's the agenda here. They're totally reinterpreting what is true and what is just in so many areas. I don't know how many exhibits that we saw that went into different aspects of American history and then pulled in tenets of DEI. These people weren't very inclusive. Yes, this person was accused of sexual impropriety, and we know that. However, I mean, I'm not making that up. Like, those were on plaques. And it was just everywhere you went, just permeating. And the reason it's like this is because good men and good women have tolerated long enough, so much so that now these ideas that we said, well, we'll just not rock the boat and we'll get along. Those ideas have now taken over, and now that takeover is indeed infecting society at large with nonsense like this. But it gets worse. Do you know why it gets worse? Because you and I, if you live in America, pay for it. Let me show you who some of the partners are here at the Lincoln's Cottage. We have the Department of Education, which is the major problem of this, right? They're pushing the entire DEI narrative. You have the Department of State. You have the Department of Homeland Security. You have the United States Commission on Civil Rights. You have the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. You have National Portrait Gallery, which that's just a museum, but it's funded by our tax dollars. You have the Arlington National Cemetery. You even have poor Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute contributing to this total nonsense. It's quite infuriating. And see what they want to do. They want to distort who Lincoln was and is, and they want to say this giant of a man who stood on this porch, who saw this view, who was troubled in the deepest parts of his soul about the inequality blacks faced, who, by the way, he became friends with Frederick Douglass. And oh, by the way, Frederick Douglass had this to say about Lincoln. He said, quote, "He was the first great man that I talked with in the United States freely, who in no single instance reminded me of the difference between himself and myself, of the difference of color. And I thought that all the more remarkable because he came from a state where there were black laws, end quote. Who, because he wanted all men free, Lincoln also wrote the Emancipation Proclamation in this room, who was shot in this presidential box at this theater with this gun, carried to this house where he bled on this pillow and died in this room. And they want to forget all that and promote lies and propaganda and sell in the gift shop nonsense like this, pushing on all of us not what is the truly good, pure, and beautiful of who Lincoln was, but rather promote the most vile and wicked narratives about him that one could even dare to imagine, which have no basis and are so outlandish, it is infuriating. There is a reason the Lincoln Memorial was created and is visited by millions a year. And I assure you, it has nothing to do with the religion of the woke DEI, sexuality, deviant Democratic Party. Now, this is a man who literally bled and died for what the quote unquote priests and prophets of DEI say they want. But it's not what they want. They want to rule and reign and make you believe in the absolutely unbelievable. Let me know your thoughts. Get involved. I came back. This might sound crazy. I have a friend in politics. I text him. I'm like, what office can I run for in local government? I want to do something because this nonsense is just getting uncontrollable. And in 10 years, it will be out of control unless good men and women get involved in the political process. That's what we've not done. And that's why we're where we are today. That's why we have podcasts that ask, was Lincoln gay? Totally insane. So please get involved. Thanks for watching this channel. I appreciate it. I'm Michael Goff. This is Chronicles of Clarity, where we are here to clarify for you. Until next time.